So if you're not shooting log with your Sony camera, you're missing out big time. Because when you shoot with log, you're getting the maximum amount of dynamic range that your camera can pretty much get without having to use RAW. And the thing is that with Sony cameras, you can't really get RAW unless if you shoot it either externally, and that depends on the camera you have. If you have, for example, the Sony A7 cameras, you can't do RAW at all until the Sony A7S III probably comes out. And a lot of times people don't want to shoot log because they just don't want to edit and they don't know how to color correct. But today I'm going to show you guys two LUTs that you can use to get the best amount of dynamic range that your camera can give you, and also you don't have to do much color correction at all, really. So here we have I have 5 clips for you guys that I shot, and they're all shot in Slog2 because in my opinion Slog2 is best for these cameras like Sony A7R3 that I'm shooting with and the Sony FS5, even though some people say Slog3 is better, but personally, I think Slog2 is better for these cameras because Slog2 is made for, I believe it's made for around 12 to 14 stops of dynamic range, and these cameras do around 14, while Slog3 is a better version that does 16 stops of dynamic range that these cameras can't do. So, in my opinion, it's better to use Slog2, but you can just try out both of them, see which one you like better, but personally, I like shooting Slog2, so all these footage that are shot in Slog2. And now if you look at the Lumetri Scopes of this, as you can see, all the data is pretty much stored in the middle. If we just go through these, even though there are these like data at the top, that's mainly from this overexposed sky, but most of the data is in the middle. As you can see, most of the data is in the middle again, and middle again. And that's what log does. It pretty much takes all the dynamic range and just compress it all in the middle. And it's our job to, take that data and like just split it apart. So, normally if you want to do that manually, you would go to like basic corrections, and I'm using Premiere. You can also do this in like pretty much Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve or whatever. And we just have to stretch out this data right here. So what you would do is you could either just put up the contrast, and that does a lot. We almost got our shadows low enough, and what you want to do pretty much is that you want to get the bottom touching close to 0 as possible, so we can do that by lowering our shadows and lowering our blacks just a little bit so that they touch the 0. But if we go too over that, it'll flatten. That means we're clipping the shadows, which we don't want to do, because if we clip the shadows, then we're losing data there. So you just want to get it close to as possible. And our highlights, we want to bring it to around 90. So to do that, we just boost our highlights, boost our whites a little bit, and something like this, it's pretty good right here. But you would have to do more adjusting. You would have to change the colors to like have it look good. But this is what you would pretty much get if you just did it manually with minimum editing. And that's kind of a pain in the ass if you don't want to deal with it. So I'm gonna show you guys the LUTs I use. And there's 2 that I mainly use, which is, let's go into my folder right here. There's a bunch of them, but I only use mainly 2 of them, which is Alistair V look 1, which is the Alistair Chapman's Venice look. So if you don't know who Alistair Chapman is and you have a Sony camera, definitely look him up. He has a bunch of educational videos on how to use the cameras, and he goes way deeper into the detail of how your camera works. So he's a great educator, and I believe he works either for Sony or he's an ambassador for Sony. But you get a lot of great information from him, and he released a lot that pretty much takes Slog2 and turns into Sony Venice colors. And things that you pretty much can't really get Sony Venice colors unless if you have like a Sony Venice. Or their newly released FX9 also has like a Sony Venice color mode, which I think it's called Cinetone or something. But with this LUT, you can pretty much put it on any Sony camera and get it also. So this is pretty amazing. So once we just apply to it, boom. That's all you have to do. And now we got the colors right here. And when you're putting it in Premiere release, make sure to always use the creative tab and not the basic correction. Because if you use the basic correction, once you apply the LUT, you can't really make any changes to it. It kind of bakes it in. But if you put it on the creative, then you can still, make adjustments to it. You can change the hue and saturation or whatever. So always do that. That's just a tip. So this LUT is my favorite because it just takes your Slog2 footage and turns it into great looking footage that's keeps the 14 stops of dynamic range, but you also get great looking colors and everything. But I only really use this if I want a neutral looking look, so pretty much a video that you don't want to be too stylized or whatever, or if you want to look in the cooler temperature where, like, you got a blue sky and everything. Like for something like this, I would use the Alistair, the Venice look. But if we want to go a little bit stylized, I like the Morrow's Airy look. This mimics the Airy colors, and as you can see, I added a little bit of like magenta into the shadows, and like it's also a little warmer. So for a scene like this, I wouldn't really use the Airy look, but the Sony's Venice look looks great on here. So let's go into a different scene where we have right here. For something like this, again, I won't. Like it all depends on like what kind of feeling you're trying to go for, but I want like a warmer like feeling. Like I want this to like feel like summer because we got a gorilla leaning up against the tree. For this, we can use the native look, and that looks all right. But if we apply the aerial look, boom, that looks so much better. But again, it's all gonna depend on how you feel. You can make some adjustments. Like I might just boost up the shadows a little bit because it's hard to see him. But let's go to a different example here. We got a pretty high contrast scene where we have, we have our subject inside of a car, and then we get a blown out sky. So for something like this, you definitely want to shoot something like S-Log, or else you just won't see the difference. And here I'm actually going to show you guys what the difference will be. Because if we just use the Alistair Chapman Venice look, I'm just gonna call it Venice look, which looks great. And again, depends on what kind of. It was like a cold day. He's wearing a sweater, so for something like this, I'm gonna use the Alistair Chapman look. But if we want to stylize a little bit more, we can go with the Airy look, which also looks great. But again, it has that like warmer tone to it. So for something like this, I would prefer the Venice look, to be honest. But that's just me. Now we got this just a Canon lens that I got right here sitting. Again, you can just do this yourself if you want. You can just boost the shadows, up the highlights. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Lower that. Lower that. Actually, I got some blacks peeking. We don't want that. But you can just mess around and do that. Or you can just use the Venice look, and boom, you already got a great looking picture. And if you want a little bit more stylized and a little bit warmer, I would go with the Airy look, which honestly is my favorite, but it doesn't fit every single. But it doesn't fit every single scenario, so it's gonna depend on what you want. And again, same here. It's just a plain. It just, as you can see, this one lacks any contrast normally. His skin looks just bland, this just looks boring. But once we add the Airy look, boom. It now looks like a commercial, But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully this video helped. And make sure to comment and subscribe. I make videos every single week, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.